Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome along to what promises to be, I think, the best interview of the day. No pressure. Welcome along to this interview with Ahmed Kouchouk, who is, as you probably all know, Vice Minister of Finance for Fiscal Policies and Institutional Reform, of course, the government of Egypt. A bit about Mr. Kouchouk before I start. He was appointed Vice Minister of Finance for Fiscal Policies and Institutional Reform in March 2016. Since then, he's been playing a leading role in designing and implementing Egypt's macroeconomic and fiscal policies and reforms. Mr. Kouchouk has been the chief negotiator and government focal point with the IMF since 2016. So he's had a busy time of late, and supervises and oversees the work of various policy-related units and departments at the Ministry of Finance, including the Macro Fiscal Unit, the Debt Management Unit, Public-Private Partnership Unit, Transparency and Citizen Engagement Unit, Public Financial Management Unit, and Institutional Reform Unit. So he's a busy man, and so we're delighted that he's spared some of his busy time to be here this afternoon. And we'll get straight into it if you don't mind. I think the big question that I'd like to ask is, tell us from your point of view where we are right now with the IMF.
No, thank you for interviewing me, and I hope we can also have a nice session and share some accurate updates for our audience. As usual, it's a pleasure to have the Euromoney in Cairo, and as always, very valuable discussions happen during this day. Coming to your question also directly, I think we are in a very good shape. We have a partner, the IMF, who has been engaging with Egypt over the last 6 years in 3 successful programs without any delay, without missing any target, without missing any reform. 3 very successful deals that happened in 5 years. Now we have another one coming. I think we are in a very good shape. We have a staff level agreement. We have a board meeting coming on the 16th of December. We have very good also desire and ambition to also not only to wait for the board, but also to make sure that in the next 4 years we are able to deliver on our homegrown program that is supported by the fund as well as other IFIs. So I think if you're asking me if there is any things remaining, I think no, we are ready for a board meeting, and I think the board meeting should happen in 16th, and after that we should start the execution of a 4-year program together with other IFIs, with other multilateral development banks participating also in the financing, as well as in other support and other reforms.
There was a little bit of chatter, should we call it, the last couple of days around why wasn't Egypt's name on the agenda at this board meeting, and there was worry that actually the deal wasn't going to happen. But you can reassure everyone that it is going to happen, and that the board meeting is effectively a formality. Is that right for you, for Egypt at least?
Very accurate what you said.
Yeah. Okay. And what is the amount of the first drawdown? Do you think is it $750 million?
I think in general we are expecting this number, this size, in the first year of the program, or the first couple of. Before the end of this fiscal year. But I think in general the program itself, I want just to also highlight this is a good opportunity for us to say that the program itself is not meant as a funding program. It's not a big funding program there. The program itself is that we believe that we have a very ambitious plan that is hinging around catalyzing the private sector role, about engaging the private sector, getting more FDIs, enhancing the competitiveness of our economy. And based on our calculations together, we think that the funding shouldn't be the main issue. So it's not a funded program. Yes, the program will allow us to mobilize also very decent package from other multilateral development banks as well as from the market, but this is the main issue. The main issue is how to get a very comprehensive economic reform program that meets our needs and challenges, and to get around it and to support and mobilize all the relevant parties to participate and support it.
So, thank you. So What's new about this program then?
This program is mainly and almost I would say entirely focusing on how to make sure that we have a much more competitive economy and a privately led growth over the next 4 years. So it's about private sector, it's about domestic and international, it's about ensuring that we are getting and enhancing the competitiveness of our economy. For this to happen, what's new in this program is that it is almost most of its reforms, most of our plans are related to structural reforms. Yes, macroeconomic stability is key. We have made big successes over the last 6-7 years in making huge improvements in some of our key fundamentals on the macro side. Now it's about time also, we have now also invested heavily in infrastructure, we have a very reliable energy supplies, we have a lot of the key foundations. Now it's about time to make equal milestone achievements on the structure side of the economy, making sure that we have a very competitive export sector in Egypt, making sure that we are able to tap the opportunities that's available globally, including in green hydrogen, in green in general activities, but at large, how to make the private sector in Egypt, operating in Egypt, competitive and able to compete regionally and globally.
Okay. You mentioned, I think, from what I can understand, the 3 billion from the IMF is just a number. It's a facility. It doesn't so much matter about the amount in a funny way, but it will unlock other money. And you mentioned other regional development banks and private sector sources as well. Would that summarize? Would that, or sort of non-MDB, but sovereign wealth funds, people like that?
The other mobilizing is mainly either MDBs.
Like who?
Like the World Bank, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, like some other, also the African Development Bank. Egypt has access to large number of MDBs, regionally as well as international. The likes of that, as well as the likes of other, maybe sometimes bilateral agencies related to countries that can also provide some support. You know, Egypt also has a very strong relation with a lot of countries, and there's a lot of support that usually comes through their bilateral agencies there. So this is the mix of the 5 billion. But also having this program would allow Egypt to have access to also the resilience and sustainability trust fund that has been recently established, and the fund. So we'll also have the ability to access this and to get also additional finance from this trust fund that can finance also our green as well as climate challenges and aspirations.
Okay, I'm conscious that we don't have all day to talk, so I'm going to rattle through, if that's okay. But I think I'm right in saying that Egypt is planning to do a panda bond, which is basically a type of sovereign bond that's sold into Chinese investor base. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, it's one of the instruments. If you go back and see our debt management strategy, one of the big pillars in this strategy is diversification. And this is not a statement that we just say. It's something that we have been working very hard over the last years to implement. Last year we did a very successful samurai bond. It was the first time. I think Tunisia did one few years ago. But other than that, I don't think that any country in the region went to the samurai bond.
And that samurai bond used what they call the gate structure, didn't it? They had a guarantee from JBIC on it,
which reduced significantly the cost.
Yes.
You're right.
Are you planning to do a similar structure for the panda bond?
Very similar structure to the panda bond.
So who's involved with that?
I think the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the African
AIIB.
Development Bank. Few others also we're talking to, but those are very advanced stages of discussion with them.
I do apologise. Let me just so I understand. So on the panda bond, you're talking to the AIIB about a similar structure to the gate structure on Japanese deal, as well as other MDBs for panda.
Yeah.
Or is it just okay?
Yeah.
So the AFDB
We're trying to have a mix of couple of entities. Again, back in 2019, we made a big non-deal roadshow in Asia, and we found that there is huge liquidity, but also very little presence from the region in general. So we're trying to do the more and more engagement now with Asian investors, including also the Gulf region, but beyond that. And I think it has been very successful. Now we did the Samurai, we're working on the Panda bond. We are, by the way, even in our traditional bond issuances the last couple of years, we have been seeing even more weight coming from Asia. Usually we used to have 2 to 3%. Now we're having at least 7 to 8% in our even traditional issuances. So it's something very, very serious, and we take it very seriously. But again, under the theme of diversification, it's not only about that. There's a lot that we're doing also in other areas. The whole idea is to go and see where new pockets of liquidity exist, and to try to come up with instruments and tools and story that also suit the needs of those type of investors, including, by the way, in the domestic market. Just if you allow me, this year we did a new floating bond issuance in our domestic market based on the request of the market, and it's helping us tremendously to tap or to cater for the demand with the current cycle. It's in the best interest of everybody to have more of a variable rate that moves up and down as fundamentals change. So also we're
like a GDP bond?
No, it's a bond that is linked. The rate there, or the interest rate, is linked to the policy rate of the central bank, which is also a way of protecting and hedging for both sides, for the issuers and for the borrowers, in a way that also allow us to move through the cycle. When there is tightening, there will be higher rates. When there are things that are on the other side, we have a lower rate. So throughout the cycle, you benefit.
Is there precedent for that anywhere?
Yes, a lot of countries do it domestically,
Okay.
But in Egypt it was a new instrument that was never there in the domestic market.
Okay. Just sticking, so diversification of funding sources, you're saying, is very, very important. I just want to take you back to the Panda, because it sounds a very interesting structure that you're attempting. The problem with these types of structures is that they are a bit complicated and that they take time. How far advanced are you in doing this type of structure?
Usually when we talk about something, we usually are very close toward the end, because we're speaking now, as we speak, we have several transactions or several ideas that we are exploring. So whenever we start, you start hearing something from us, it means that we are very close. So we're planning this fiscal year to close this deal, inshallah.
Okay, exciting time. So AIB, AFDB, any others?
Those whom I can now talk about with confirmation.
Okay, interesting. It's exciting. It's very exciting. And $500 million equivalent, we think.
We're hoping for that, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And I think your minister this morning talked about looking at other things too. So I think he mentioned the sustainability bond. Sorry.
I think what the minister meant in the morning is that during the COP we did something very interesting. We upgraded our green financing framework into what we call sustainable financing framework, and by doing that we are doing or gaining two big edges. The first one is that now you have a framework that is much more inclusive, that allows us to do more than green financing. It allows us to do other label bonds, sustainably linked bonds, that allows us to do social bonds, that allows us to do all the colored bonds, the blue bonds, the gender bonds, so all the label bonds and all the different things. So it's a much more inclusive framework. It does not limit us. Actually, we can do still a green financing or a green bond under the same or this broad umbrella, but it is a much broader one. So this is what we did during COP. The other big advantage of that is that it also allowed us to upgrade and to add to our framework all the recent work and initiatives and reforms that we have been doing on the climate-related issues as well as the green issues. So we were able to add more projects, add more meat, and add more commitment there. So we have now a very broad umbrella. What His Excellency the Minister said in the morning was basically that we have this general umbrella that can allow us now to move with wider options. It can be sustainably linked bond, it can be a green bond, it can be a social bond, it can be a blue bond. It depends on things. By the way, we have also a very, very aggressive and very ambitious plan on desalination, on wastewater management. So we have also a lot of options now and a lot of abilities to work across different menus and different things. So I think that that management now will have a lot of interesting things to work on with partners.
Yes, it sounds like you'll have a rainbow of different types of structures to choose from. You mentioned sustainability-linked bonds, which are, I think, one of the more interesting financial products to come out in the last 3 or 4 years. As a sovereign, I think so far we've seen Chile and Uruguay issue of sustainability-linked bonds. Do you think that's something that Egypt will look to do in the next year or so?
It's something that we're looking at, but it's not the only thing that we're looking at.
No.
That's what I want to say. But it's and by the way, it's interesting to link or to have clear KPIs, but also even with our green bond issuance, we have very clear KPIs. We have to report every year. We have to issue every year an impact report where we put to the investor base very detailed assessment about the proceeds, where it went, how it was used, the impact of the project that we are financing. So we have built over the last couple of years a good understanding and good capacity for measuring things, for committing ourselves to certain things, and for also coming back to the investor base and explaining to them exactly how far we have achieved and how and being very transparent about that. So I think we have all the foundations and the abilities and the capacity to move and do a lot of things, including sustainable financing.
Are you finding that you're not only designing products to suit your country's economy and the way it moves forward, but you're also designing financial products that meet the modern day investor's requirements? So my question really is, are you finding that you're having to do these because otherwise you might not be able to attract the same amount of interest from the international investor base?
We're doing this because for a couple of reasons. One of them, yes, you have to be forward-looking. We have to always be joining or dealing with the market dynamics in a very progressive way. But also we're doing that because we have also a very good story in certain areas that we believe that our role as a government is not only to tap those markets, but actually to create the benchmarking for the private sector to tap those markets. So a lot of those transactions, by the way, or those milestone transactions are meant mainly, or one of the main reasons for that is to open the market for our private sector, for those operating in Egypt, for our commercial banks, for our businesses that is operating in the market. So they need to have a benchmark pricing, and they need to have a first comer that pave the way and also that commit to the macro story and to the macro KPIs. So that's a key reason why we move in that direction. Sometimes people blame, or sometimes people say that what is in there in terms of yields. No, I think it's a much more inclusive story. And I can tell you something, that even during difficult times, we find that investors in green, for example, in our green bonds, were more sticky. Okay. They are there, they are long-term investors, and they are more sticky. So it's also additional reason why we would like to always move into new areas where we feel that it is more, can bring us more sustainable and more long-term investors.
Okay. So maybe we take it sort of back a step a bit, but what is which makes green finance so important to Egypt?
I think we are seeing a huge opportunity globally that countries and our neighboring also regions, including Europe, is looking for clean and green energy sources. We have in Egypt incredible resources in terms of renewables, which is a very important ingredient for green hydrogen and other green sources of energy. We have the proximity, but we also have something very interesting. We have investors, private sector investors that have been in this area for the last 6-7 years since we did our feed-in tariff program, the couple of feed-in tariff programs. So they know us very well. They have been operating here for 6 years. They know the system. They know how to, they have tested us. They know that we are very serious, that we respect all the contracts that we were able to deliver. They have a mechanism. So all the risk assessment related to this sector is in a very good shape. So we have the investor base, we have the potential, we have an off-take partner that is in need and that is willing. So I think we have the perfect match. All we just need to do is not to lose the momentum and the opportunity, and to figure it very quickly and to try to deliver.
You mentioned renewables, of course. They're a big part of the power supply, the power source, I should say, nowadays for Egypt. But you're doing it at the same time as increasing your gas. You obviously see gas as part of the transition to net zero. Is that correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And also it's important for our domestic.
Not a view held by others elsewhere in the world, but yeah.
Yeah, but again, I think it's not either or. I mean, you can see that we're very credible and ambitious. I mean, a few years ago, in our energy mix, in our electricity mix, around 4% was coming from renewables.
Yes.
Today,
until about 2014,
14, 15, yeah. Now we're talking about above 20%, and we're moving towards even 40% by 2030.
So you've just revised your targets.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're taking it very seriously, and but also it's good that you have all the options, and you have a very reliable also energy supply, because it's one of the major, by the way, factors that any international or domestic investor, when they are looking for or putting a plan for the long term, this is very important. The reliability of energy supplies in the country is a very important factor for long-term decisions by investors.
Okay, so just one more question on this. So an interesting thing that was said to me a bit earlier, and I feel a bit bad for asking this, but he was saying that he felt that a lot of the work on energy nowadays is not so much a drive to make it more renewable, but to make it more secure. But I presume the two go hand in hand.
I think this is a general statement, but in our case, I think the security and the reliability of energy supplies is beyond this.
Yeah.
So what is ahead of us is to tap the opportunity on the green side, on having more renewable energy production from Egypt, but also to be able to export this either directly or in form of more higher value added products like green hydrogen.
Yeah. So last question. How are you going to build on this success in 2023 and beyond?
Delivering on our promises, making sure that that our private sector is gaining more competitiveness, that we are also announcing our state ownership policy and implementing it, that we are doing enough to show that we are dealing with some of the challenges that our private sector is facing. So I think the entire focus in the next years would be on delivering again a comprehensive program like what we did back in 2016 when we came up with a very ambitious program. It was a medium-term program also, and we delivered on it. Now it's time also to have this program announced fully, and then to deliver on it timely and in a way that can really make sure that we are dealing with the structural issues very seriously, as we did with the macroeconomic issues a few years ago.
Okay, well, Mr. Kouchouk, thank you so much for spending a bit of time with me on stage this afternoon. Thank you very much. Good luck with the IMF in mid-December. I'm sure it sounds very straightforward now. So good luck with that, and thank you very much. Can everybody join me in thanking the speaker?
Thank you.